Today I want to focus on St. Louis Marie de Montfort. He's one of my favorite saints, and I believe that his story has a lot to offer you and me. If you don't know anything about him, he was born in the late 17th century. He was one of many children, and at a young age, he grew in devotion for the Blessed Mother. As soon as he was able, he was in school, preparing himself to be a priest. As he found himself in multiple schools, he realized that he was not like many. He was different. He was brilliant, and people recognized his holiness, and yet he rubbed people the wrong way, so much so that they didn't have a place for him by the time that he became a priest. He went to Rome, and it was in that moment that he asked the Pope to let him be a missionary. The Pope decided that yes, you can be a missionary priest, but I want you to do your work there in France. So de Montfort set out and spent the rest of his life preaching the gospel in France. But his story is not one of great moment after great moment. No, it's one of hardship and rejection. It is said that during his lifetime, 11 different dioceses asked him to leave. Multiple bishops met with him, recognized his goodness, and said, "I don't want anything to do with you." They were scared by who he was, by the challenges that he was making of the people. The reality is, for many of these bishops, they had become so comfortable with their lives that they weren't ready for the message that de Montfort had. He was telling them that they needed to live differently, that they needed to give up their comforts and instead embrace poverty. I think, if we're being honest, we also would probably have a tough time if our priests at our local church told us to embrace poverty. And yet, in a certain sense, that is what we're called to. Maybe not spiritual poverty to the point where we have no money in our bank or we're afraid of being able to keep the lights on. But no, we are invited into a reality that we're not focused on the material things of this life, that we are instead focused on supporting those who are in need, both through the channels of our family and friends, but also the stranger. I share this story about St. Louis de Montfort not only to invite you into a greater poverty or a greater sacrifice, but I share this story because of today's gospel. It talks about the stone which has been rejected has become the cornerstone. Jesus Christ is showing us that he is rejected, and yet he is the person that we need to go after. He is the person we need to be like. And so de Montfort understood that. He understood that rejection was a part of the plan that God had for him. He understood that this was really a testing. How faithful can you be when things are going well? Well, most of us can say, yeah, I can do this. But what happens when we're inconvenienced, when things become difficult, when people start to doubt us, when people start to reject us, when people start to wonder if we're really as good as we say we are? Imagine the bishop kicking you out of your diocese. Would you still feel like you're pursuing holiness in the right way? It takes a special person to see that, accept it with humility, and yet still continue to do your job. But that's what you and I are called to. We're called to live our faith in such a way that some people are not able to handle it because they're not ready to live holiness that deeply. And so I'm not saying to go look for rejection, but what I am saying is we need to be open to whatever the Lord needs from us. And in that readiness, in that openness, God will do great things with us. De Montfort died eventually poor, stricken, and in many ways forgotten. And yet today, we celebrate him. We celebrate his life. We read his readings still today. Some of his books are some of the most cherished books in our Catholic faith. And this is all because he accepted the graces of the moment and he lived for Jesus Christ alone. His great phrase was God alone. And that's my invitation to you today. What if you and I both made a declaration that we are going to live for God alone? Just do it for today. See how it feels. Imagine each and every action you do with God at the center. What does it look like? And if you're able to do that today, imagine adopting that same mentality the next day, and the day following, and the day after that. Eventually, our mindsets will change, and we'll soon find ourselves pursuing holiness above all else. And that's what we're called to, brothers and sisters. So that's my invitation for you today. God alone.